Welcome to the Property Renovation Podcast. For anyone who loves renovation, wants to save money, and to learn the best tips and tricks of the industry. And now, your host, 3 times award winner of leading renovation website House, and over 15 years in the industry, renovating just over 200 properties, James Woodham.
Hello, welcome to the Property Renovation Podcast. My name's James Woodham, and this episode is particularly interesting because it's our first homeowner experience. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Colin Gray. He's a property owner who lives in Edinburgh at the moment, and he was doing a loft extension with 2 other people that owned the property as well. So it's particularly interesting. Didn't go entirely to plan, and I hope you really enjoy the episode. Before I just introduce you to Colin, don't forget you can join our community on Facebook, which is facebook.com/groups/the Property Renovation Podcast. And you can also go onto iTunes to leave a review, please. The more reviews we have, the more listeners we get and the more people we help. So if you can go onto iTunes and leave a review, or Stitcher, and please share this and give it to anyone that you think will need help with a renovation. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the episode. So today here we've got Colin Gray. He's been through a personal experience of a renovation. So Colin, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast.
No problem at all. Glad to be here.
Good. So what we're going to do is I've got 10 questions, and this will give you a chance to speak about your experience in doing a renovation, and don't hold anything back. So anything that you say hopefully will help others as well.
Yeah.
And, so let's just get started. So question 1 was what made you decide to do a loft extension? Was it family growth, or was it like property value aspect? What was it?
Yeah, it was definitely value, because at the time we weren't living in it. So I do have a family, got a couple of young kids, but we had a house of our own at the time. So the flat that we were looking to renovate was one that myself and a couple of other people bought back in university days. Uh-huh. So we'd owned it for 7 or 8 years, and we were now looking to get rid of it just to simplify things, basically, because we were all getting our own families and needing to do other stuff. So we kind of needed rid of it. But we discovered after we'd bought it that we owned a loft space, and it was strange because we'd never been told this during the purchase process. It just came up in the deeds afterwards. So yeah, it was entirely just try to get more value out of it, because we thought it'd be a bit of a waste to have this loft there, not do something with it if we could. So that was the main purpose.
And what was the experience in work, like trying to finalize everything and get it off the ground as such?
It was long and tedious, and it took a long time, actually, because so the first part of it was the fact that because there was 3 of us that owned it, it was me, my brother, and a good friend of mine. Uh-huh. We all had kind of different opinions of what to do. So myself and my brother both knew we wanted to do the extension because we felt like we'd be totally wasting the opportunity if we didn't. But my friend was really against it. He just didn't have much money to put into it, which is fair enough, but also just was quite kind of risk averse on it. He didn't really want to. It was partly to do with the neighbours, actually, the fact that we were in it was a tenement, so he'd had a lot more experience with the neighbours and everything, and there was a bit of kind of, the standard tenement stairway arguments back and forth, kind of older residents who are kind of put out by the younger residents and stuff like that. So it was going to be a bit of a thing for them, like not a problem exactly, but the scaffolding would go up. There'd be a couple of months where stuff's going up and down the stairs, and he wasn't keen on all of that stuff, so he didn't really want much to do with it. So that was it took us a while to get it going, because we had to talk it through ourselves as the owners, like my brother and my friend. And also we had to then look at how we were going to source the money and choose builders and all that kind of stuff. So it felt like it took a long time, but we got there eventually.
Just to go back about that there was 3 of you involved. So how did you have different opinions in how you wanted it to look in terms of style as well?
No, actually, that wasn't something that really came up. So the way it all resolved in the end was the fact that my brother lives down south, so he's in England. The flat's in Edinburgh, and my friend lives up in Inverness now. So I mean, we're all pretty spread out. I was the closest, and I'm not even that close to it. So I was like 60 miles away north up in Dundee. So it basically came down to I was the one that said, look, this isn't going to get done, basically, unless I take this forward, because Bruce is too far away. He wants to do it. Dylan doesn't want to do it. So Dylan eventually agreed to that we could go ahead with it as long as he didn't have anything to do with it. And absolutely fair enough. Like, that was just that was an honest conversation we had, and I was totally happy with that. So it just came down to the fact that everybody was happy to go. Was going to do all of the work on it, basically. So that included decisions on decorating, on layout, on everything, basically. So it ended up, even though it was a shared ownership flat, it ended up being my project.
Right. Okay. So you kind of was project managing it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
How long was you planning it for?
How long? Well, we'd been thinking about it for about 3 or 4 years, probably. We owned the flat, I think, for maybe, it was 2000s, it was close to 10 years. Yeah. So it was about 9 years we owned it for. And we discovered literally straight away, like within months of buying it, that we owned that loft space. So straight away we were like, oh, wow, that's, we could do something with that someday. Right. But obviously, it took a long time before we were in a position, money-wise, to be able to actually do it. Yeah. So we'd started to get close, thinking, well, I had got somebody around. I'd got a builder around just to have a look at it out of interest, just a sort of free estimate type of thing, maybe about 3 years before that. So that was what gave me an idea of what we could do and the costs that might be involved. That kind of gave me the ballpark estimate. Okay. At the time, still didn't have enough funds to do it, nor the motivation. There was loads of other stuff going on in our lives at that time, including...
Oh, lost you again.
And eventually the prompt to really get moving on it was that we were all, by that point, me, my brother and my friend, were all sort of buying new places, and it was just becoming quite complicated in terms of having this shared ownership, in terms of even applying for new mortgages and stuff like that. So it was just like, we need to get rid of this to simplify things. So if we're going to do anything about the renovation, we need to get it done now.
Okay. So with the builders, did you end up, like, how did you end up deciding who to go with in terms of, like, choosing the builders? Talk about from the beginning when you invited some people round to the selection.
Yeah. We ended up I knew an architect in Dundee who I met through networking events, and I knew him reasonably well. So it felt natural to go ahead with him in terms of the architecture, and he, we obviously paid for it, but I trusted that he wasn't going to charge too much, and he was being fair with everything and all that kind of stuff. So he was the first contact. He was the one that went down and had a look at it and started drawing up designs and stuff. And he started looking around for builders as well, because I didn't really know any. I had no idea. So he gave me a lot of help around that. What we ended up doing was there was 2 companies came round to have a look at it. Through him, so he got a couple to come around and have a look, and there was one as well that I found just through a search around Edinburgh, just getting referrals and stuff. And we got 3 around, so we got 3 companies around to have a look. They went away, came back and forth with a few more questions, and eventually sent in the quotes. So that was where we got to. It was just 3 companies, 3 quotes, and in the end, one of them, we had a massive variety of prices, obviously. Like one of them, 2 of them were reasonably close on the lower end, and one was maybe about another 20 grand extra, probably almost probably about a third of the total project cost, above and beyond the other 2. Yeah. And in the end, I chose the one on the lower end. Not because they did end up being the cheapest, but not by much. They were both pretty close. It was because the guys seemed pretty... I just got on with them. It was like a gut feeling. These people they seemed decent. They, not that the other ones were, bad or anything, but it ended up just being a gut feel. They seemed like they were pretty proactive with their questions. They came around. They seemed pretty thorough with the way they looked around the flat, all that kind of stuff. So it was a little bit of price, because to be fair, the more expensive guys, they proved within that quoting process, I think that they would have been probably more thorough on the job.
Right.
Like they were on top of everything, so many details, so much stuff. Like what they sent through was so kind of on it that but they were just so much more that I don't think we could have done the project at that price. So we had to go with the cheaper one in the end.
So it wasn't necessarily because of themselves. It was just because of affordability. It
was simply affordability. Yeah, I mean, we were looking at the project. The total cost was something, I don't really mind sharing the numbers. Roughly, it was something in the region of, like, the bottom quote was around 40 grand, the top quote was around 60 grand, and my kind of. We were borrowing a little bit of money for this, a little bit of our own, like all of our savings, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that 20 grand difference was huge. Like, it was 50% again what the lower one was. So it just seemed, it didn't seem worth it for that extra bit of detail, since I thought the lower end one seemed pretty decent anyway.
Yeah. Besides the money aside, what else helped you go through? Like, what was the selection process? Did you go and see some of their work? Did you go a bit more in depth to make a decision between the three?
So this is something I should have done. I should have done more of that. I should have went and looked at things they'd done, get references, that kind of stuff. The problem I had was that I was in Dundee, so it was quite tricky. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world to come down and sort things out. And plus I was working with the architect, and I was kind of leaning on him a little bit to give me advice on what I should be looking for, and he'd referred this building company we eventually chose as well. So to be honest, no, I didn't do a whole lot of that at all. Okay,
but it was one that he referred. So yes, I guess you felt like more of a gut instinct in that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we've spoken about the complications. What helped you make the final decision? We've already answered that. I mean, this is always a question that homeowners have. If they're going to start investing in a renovation, or they're going to extend the property in size, you've got to get a return on investment in that. So would you mind us talking a little bit about that, and like what was the benefits in doing it in terms of the return on investment, and how long did that take, do you think?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if you were going to ask me about whether there were any problems during the project or not, but I'll jump straight to that.
I might come back to that. Yeah, that is one of the questions.
Yeah. But that kind of ties in pretty closely to this. We did. To cut long story short, we did end up making money out of it, so it was worthwhile doing. But there were a couple of problems with the whole thing in the end. So that first builder that we took on ended up not being half as reliable as we thought. We got about 2/3 of the job done with them, and then it was just sort of all sorts of problems, unreliability, and in the end they dropped off the job. So we were 2/3 in, had overpaid a little bit. Not overpaid, as in we'd paid more than they'd done, which obviously is a silly thing to do, but an experienced person on this kind of thing I had done a little bit of. And we ended up in a bit of a position where we had to take somebody else on in the end. So we had to go and hire another builder, and get them to finish the job. In the end, so I mean, that's what I was saying about. I would have definitely gone back and taken more referrals, definitely gone and looked at more of their jobs, talked to people that they'd worked with before. Because when you're, I don't know, I had now. There's this kind of like idealistic view of the world where people tend to believe people are like them, don't they? So you don't believe the whole cowboy builders thing where people can just be completely unreliable and kind of. Leave you up a creek without a paddle. But so I kind of, because I liked them, because they came along, they seemed pretty thorough and everything, I just assumed everyone would be fine. But I would be much more stringent, much more thorough in future and checking that kind of thing. And it seems, the thing is, I say this to people and they're all like, oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? But then I would have said that to somebody else, but I still didn't do it, because I just went, I think it's easy to think it's obvious when you hear somebody else say it, but I think a lot of people out there don't do that.
No, you're right. Yeah, I think if you feel at the time that it's the right decision, even though you should be doing some checks, people do just go with it. And I think it's a combination of excitement. trying to get it started. Let's do this. But there are so many things that you do have to think of in the background. I think one of the main purposes, the reason why we're doing this property renovation podcast, is to kind of have this chat with people that have gone through the experience. Hopefully people will listen to it and learn from it, and also hear from the other side, so from building companies. And that's what our plan is, to get them on as well. So let's just talk a little bit about the fact that the first company didn't do such a great job. And you felt like you paid them, or you did pay them, you overpaid them. So I'm assuming that when you took them on, you probably gave them a deposit to start beforehand. And then there would have been a process of instalments. Depending on what stages they're at. Okay. Yes, indeed. Good. And did you have a contract with them to do the job?
If by contract, so there was a pretty detailed quote made up. They put through some good paperwork with like payment and full payment, detailed down to itemized to what I was paying for, payment terms, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So that was all sent through and signed originally. Yes. Okay.
And did they provide you with some kind of guidance and like a schedule as to what they expect to have done at what time, and how long the project's going to take overall?
Do you know what? I don't think there was anything much in terms of timescales. No, it was more, we talked roughly about what we'd expect. It was roughly expected to be about a 3-month job.
Okay. And how did you measure the quality of the work? So if like they installed, like they got to 25% complete, how did you manage that? How did you like? Did you sign the work off to say I'm happy with it so far? What happened with that?
So here's another area where I was a bit naive. I didn't go down and check it half enough, partly because I had a whole lot of other stuff going on in my life at the time in terms of new business, new kid, all that kind of stuff. So I was really busy anyway. I was in Dundee, so it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to go and check. And what I was doing really was being on the phone every few days. So I was talking to them at least every couple of days, just getting an update. But naively, I was believing everything that they told me over the phone. And I did go down and check. We went down once and I saw some of the progress. And I mean, the problem is I went down and I had a look, and I was kind of looking at like knocked down walls and sort of plasterboard and stuff. And I don't really know how to judge the quality of that kind of thing. It's not like I'm an expert in it. It looked good to me. And you know what? The work this original company did in the end, I mean, it was decent. It seemed a decent quality to me. Like I see it now in the areas that they did finish. It all looks perfectly good. So yeah, that was all fine. But yeah, I should have been on site more. I should have been there more, actually looking at what happened, and that's why we ended up overpaying a little bit.
Given the distance, hold on, you've just cut out.
Oh yeah, this has been done. Yeah. But some of it hadn't. They were just like, they were behind basically and trying to tell me that things had been done. So that's why a few things were paid beyond what had been done.
Do you think if someone approached you back then and said, look, I can project manage the job for you, and they were local, perhaps they were charging a percentage of the overall cost and whatever, would that have been something that then you would have considered to do?
I certainly would do that next time if I was doing this again. If I couldn't be there, I mean, well, I would be one of the two. It would either be I would take more responsibility for it, and I would definitely pop into the place at least once a week, if not more. If I couldn't do that, though, I absolutely and utterly would employ somebody independent, from the building company to be there checking it out.
Good. Okay. So I've got 3 more questions, and I think we've kind of answered them in a way. If you could give one piece of advice to anyone wanting to extend the size of their property, what would it be?
I think
you can give more than one if you want.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I learned from it was the eventual cost of the project was as much as that higher end company charged. So we ended up spending more than that. I was talking about the two low quotes and the one high quote, and the one high quote, which I thought those guys were just, I believe now that if I'd gone with them, it would have ended up costing us about the same, if maybe even a little bit less. But it would have been done much quicker, much more expertly without all of the stress. And I mean, in the end, because of all the troubles, it ended up taking close to a year to get the whole thing finished. Right. So it was a year of my life where I was just. It's the most like I don't tend to get stressed easily, but it was the most stressed and most kind of strung out I've ever been in my life through the latter part of that year. Gosh. So I would happily pay more to have not gone through that. So yeah, but I mean the way I would have got around that is we've talked about a couple of them, but just to highlight, I think absolutely you need some references from people who they've worked with before, and don't just take that as oh no, they seem okay, actually I should do it, but I'm not going to, which is basically what I did. Need to be there whatever week in week out, checking in on the work, or have somebody else doing that. And certainly don't just take the lowest quote, although that's not necessarily why I chose those guys. So yeah, also I mean I think one of the biggest things is don't underestimate, even if you do end up with a good company, because I did end up with a good guy to finish it off, who I would go back any day. He saved my life basically, this guy at the end. In the end, it was just it was more of an independent person who had a network of contractors I ended up working with to get it finished off. Right. And he was so good, so helpful, just stayed behind to finish things off, and didn't just sort of helped me out a lot. But it was still a lot of work to work with him to get it finished. Sure. So I mean, even if it goes smoothly, don't underestimate the amount of time you have to put into something like this.
Can I just touch on the company that ended up finishing the job off? Do you, if honestly, do you think that you were put in a corner in a way? And by that I mean that they already knew that you were halfway through this, you needed it complete. Do you think that when it come down to them quoting, do you think that there was an element that they knew that you needed to get this done? So really, it didn't, like, from a building company point of view, you wouldn't have known whether they were charging you for the true value of what's left to do. Yeah.
I know what you mean. I got another thing that added to all the stress of it. I had 2 or 3 companies quote for completing it, like they came round and looked at the state of it. So it wasn't just this one company actually. So I did get an idea of what the value was just through 2 or 3 companies doing it. And I actually went with one company to get it finished, and they let me down entirely. They said, right, okay, we can do it. I'm going to charge this much. We can start it in 6 weeks' time. I was like, 6 weeks? I need to wait that long? Oh. But we need to get this finished. I can't really find that many other people available to start it any quicker. Yeah. And then at literally the week before they were due to start, so that 5-week mark, they said, can't do it. We've totally overbooked ourselves, so we're going to have to let you down. It's like, what? So it was just, so the search was back on. I had to get more people out. And again, this is me going down to Edinburgh from Dundee to meet building companies to get the quotes done, all that kind of stuff. And it was just a nightmare. But yeah, so I believe I'm talking about a bad building company, and in fact, I caught a few not great ones here. But the guy, like I say, the guy that ended up helping me out was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, so helpful, so honest and diligent, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So they do exist, and it came through as well. The fact that I got a quote from a company in Edinburgh who are much bigger, much bigger team, more higher costs, and therefore they quoted me way more than I could afford to get it finished off. But the guy was really honest about it. The guy said, look, I don't think you're going to be able to afford this. I'm sending you the quote, but do you know what? I'm going to send you it, and I'm going to refer you to a guy that used to work for us that went out on his own. And that's how I got referred to the guy that ended up finishing it. Right. So, okay. So this bigger, more kind of established, quite kind of nationwide building company actually ended up, one of the guys that worked for them ended up phoning me up every couple of weeks for about 2 months after this. Like, I wasn't even working with him, but he was just really so helpful and cared about it. Like and I don't think it was just a line. He kept saying, look, I just hate it to see people getting let down by people in our trade, because I know people, there's a reputation that builders can get, that there are more cowboy builders out there than decent ones. And so this guy was just, it seemed to me that he was being honest, and it was just genuinely trying to help me out because he wanted to try and overcome that perception of their trade. Yeah, so,
I think it's like also to do with the passion. If they're passionate about being in the building industry, then they're gonna go that extra mile to make sure that you're on the right track with the person that they've introduced you to. That's good. So just to go back, I just wanted to make a comment about, your experience in terms of like choosing the lesser quote. I mean, it's a very common thing that I think customers do. Like, when you're trying to do a renovation, everything is tight. You want to achieve the maximum for the least amount of money, and it's very tempting to go for the cheapest quote. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what I think is, it's doing your research. So asking all the questions, comparing the free building companies that you've got quotes from, just to find out if they are all going to be giving you the same service. It can change from anything to do with the products that they're going to be installing, right down to the amount of weeks, because they could get more people on the job to finish quicker if they charge a little bit more. We spoke about this on a previous episode. That's why I'm just mentioning it now. But, it's not all about the numbers. And it is about like looking into it a little bit more. There is a reason why it's so cheap, that's it. Great. Yeah. Good. I think that was really, really good. Final question.
Sure.
What we're doing here, so like the Property Renovation Podcast, what's your opinion about it? Like, I think our mission is to just educate homeowners to if they're doing a renovation, educate them, get them prepared for doing it, and showing them all about contracts and everything else. What's your opinion about it?
I think it's great, because I got into that project. I was quite excited about it originally. I was like, this is something I could work on. So we're going to make a big change to this place where we lived for years, hopefully make a bit of money out of it that we can put into our next home that we buy, get us up the property ladder a bit. But I just didn't really know much about it at all. The only things that I could the only kind of education I could find about it is, there's some random websites out there, but it's kind of, most of them are trying to sell you something, not kind of honest, real stories. I think hearing real stories of people that have gone through things, and not necessarily, we've talked a lot about the fact that there's loads of TV programs out there about the building trade, which are all really dramatic and melodramatic and kind of sensationalist, where they only talk about the worst possible things that can happen. So you can get a bit of a bad picture of it, I think, or it's a really good picture where you look at it in like renovation magazines, where it's like a beautiful home that went seamlessly and it was all perfect. It's the in-between stories, I think, that are the most interesting, the ones where a few little things went wrong, some things went right, there was some small lessons learned, some big lessons as well, and it's those things that you can bring out, I think, that are the most valuable for people, because I think a lot of that stuff doesn't get told.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for that. It's really important for us, and I'm glad that you said that, because hopefully we will be able to grow the podcast more, and we'll get more and more listeners, and hopefully help a lot more people. I just want to thank you very much for coming on as our first homeowner experience.
No worries at all.
And thank you very much.
Perfect. Good luck with the podcast in future.
Cheers. Take care.